So, you all right there?
Yeah, sorry, I'd never seen something pop up before, and it said, avoid legal snags. Tell people you're recording them. Welcome back to the Off Track Autocast. Today we are diving into Eric, and we are seeing what got him into cars, what got him into drifting, and basically why we're here today. So Eric, tell us a little bit about what got you into cars.
What got me into cars? Well, I mean, we can go multiple ways. We can go back to childhood. We can go to first car. All right, childhood. So childhood, my earliest memory of like being into cars and like kind of knowing that like, okay, this is something I'm into, I would say it would be video games. Like Crash Bandicoot. I don't know if that counts. And Mario Kart. I don't know if that counts.
Listen,
but yes.
Like there was cars in that shit.
Exactly. The OG game for me was Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and playing it with my dad. And we're running from the cops and we're racing each other at the same time. And it's funny because
your dad would play with you?
Oh yeah, my dad was
That's awesome.
My dad was pretty competitive, so that's why this story is kind of funny, because it's like we would play Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. This is how it went down. He would work all day, I would go to school, and then he would come home from work, and then after dinner we would play Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, and we'd be eating Chips Ahoy cookies, and we'd be racing, and we always used the same car, the Lamborghini Gallardo SV, and it had this fucking little like pinstripe with the letter SV on the side of it, and you could always pick your color, and I always go red because that's like my favorite color for cars. Same. If you haven't noticed, if you look at the cars that I've had. But yeah, so me and my dad used to race on that game all the time. And then there was also this map that was, it was kind of like woody, like it was like, I guess like fall. There's a lot of trees and the leaves were falling, and there was this wooden bridge that you had to go across. But it was like a little jump, and then if you went to the side, you would fucking like crash through the wood. And so pretty much me and my dad would always
race. It was like a little shortcut.
Yeah. So me and my dad would always race. He'd beat me every single time. Barely though, he would beat me. And then I remember the one time I beat him, we never played Need for Speed together again after that experience. But that
said, fuck that.
Pretty much was like when he lost, he like, I don't know, probably his ego. He's like, man, I can't believe I just lost to this kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I lost him.
Or he was like, these kids are too good at video games. I'm going outside. That was like my earliest memories of cars, was playing video games and like the Need for Speed Underground and stuff like that, customizing your car and putting an underglow on it. And like they even had like a drift mode on there. Like that was like my favorite thing. And one of my best friends from childhood, Corey, he had a Miata as like his like drift car, which is pretty funny because like that was my first drift car, was a fucking Miata.
See, that's where it came from. It was ingrained deep in the childhood.
Honestly, I wouldn't say the Miata was ingrained in me as in like I want that as a drift car, like, because honestly I was just like everybody else. Like when I seen drifting, the cars that looked the coolest to me were like 240s and RX-7s and stuff like that. And that's what I wanted, but I couldn't afford it whenever I got into drifting. And the Miata kind of like fell in my lap, which I'll get to. But I have a fetish for like buying cars and doing stuff differently than other people. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to have the same car as everybody else. You know what I mean?
See, I have a different aspect on that. Mine is I want to drive the exact same car you're driving and show you that I can drive it better.
Yeah. See, for me, that's the cool thing about drifting whenever you think about it is that there's a style aspect to it. Let's say you have a 350Z. A lot of people have 350Zs. If you're going to get noticed driving a 350Z, you have to be wild. You have to stand out because there's so many people driving that car. People are just gonna be like, oh, it's another 350Z, whatever, another 350Z, another 350Z. But then when you see a fucking Miata that has a license plate on the back that says "Send Nudes" and it's crashed, and fucking I had a tractor flap coming out the hood for my turbo downpipe. You know what I mean? People see that car and they're like, damn, that thing is fucking beat up and it looks crazy and it's different. And then they're like, damn, and he shreds. So like it grabs attention. You know what I mean? So I have this thing that's why drifting's cool, because it's like the style aspect of drifting. You have some people that just really focus on driving and they don't do any style at all, and like they can be a really really good driver, but they might not get noticed, you know what I mean? And a lot of people don't want to, they might not even want to drive with them because they never notice them, you know what I mean? But if you have style and suck at driving, that's also a negative thing. Like your car can look badass and have all the bells and whistles and look, cool and sound badass, but then it's like you spin out every single time, and then people are like, man, that guy wasted all his money building this car. But if you can have that perfect balance of having like the sickest looking car and then drive it like it's a piece of shit $500 car and you just send it, like that's like the most, it's like street cred. It's like the most cred that you can get in drifting. It's like your car's sick, it sounds sick, it fucking looks sick, it's different, it's unique, and you shred and you put it on people's doors.
It's the whole combo. Yeah.
People are like, damn. Because it's like when you look at like all, like look at FD for instance, it's like these guys, everybody in FD is amazing. You know what I mean? You see what they're doing with these cars. All the cars are amazing. But there's only a handful of people that really stand out, and it's usually the people who are fucking shredders.
They put on a show, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, look at Chelsea DeNofa. Like, the dude is insane with that Mustang, and he was insane with the BMW. And I think he's podiumed like twice, but he has more of a following than like Michael Essa, who's won a championship. You know what I mean? But he has a BMW, and it's pretty mild looking, and it's like, it is badass, but it's not like super super exciting. When you see him pull up, you're not like, oh, he's about to go off, you know what I mean?
And like Forrest Wang, when I was just getting into it, I liked Forrest Wang because he was always the most sideways.
He had the most amount of angle and the sickest looking car, and it's just like the hot boy wheels, and just like it just is what it is. It's just there's so many factors when it comes to a drift car, and that's why it's kind of complicated to explain to people that aren't into drifting, because they don't like, they understand it to a degree, but they don't understand it at the same time. You know what I mean? They can't look at a car and be like, damn, that's sick, because they just don't understand the culture. You know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like it's different everywhere. But anyways, sorry about that tangent. Got off track there. But
so what was the first car that you modified?
The first
car, oh my god, I think I remember this.
I don't even know if you know this. My first car actually was a Dodge Stratus, right? My first.
Are those front wheel drive?
Yeah, front wheel drive, 2.4 liter, like, you know what I mean? Pretty ugly.
Really ugly.
Yeah, really ugly. So that was my first car, and the reason I ended up with that car was because my friend's mom, like, because the first car I wanted was actually a Civic, and then my friend's mom was like, no, like, you got to get something reliable and safe and all this stuff. So I ended up with this boring ass Dodge Stratus, because I pretty much let her pick the car for me, because I just wanted
reliable.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, she's like, you need all this stuff, and I probably picked the worst first car ever and paid way too much money for it, because I bought it from a dealership, like a used car lot, and I paid like straight cash. I don't even remember like negotiating with them. I'm sure I overpaid like a motherfucker. Yeah, so the first mod I did with that thing is the Dodge Stratus. Some of them came without a wing, and some of them came with a little spoiler on the back, with the OEM spoiler. So I got me a trunk that had that OEM spoiler. So I got a spoiler as my first upgrade.
You straight came from Need for Speed.
Straight up. I'm like, all right, what's the first thing that I want to do? I was like, okay, I got me a spoiler, and I just kept driving it. And then the next funny thing about that car is I actually attempted to drift that car. From playing Need for Speed and stuff, the way I thought about drifting, I didn't even know pretty much what drifting was. I just kind of was like, I want to get sideways in my car. You know what I mean? I remember in Need for Speed, like, you come up to a turn and you would just like gun it, and the car would like kick out. And it had rained that day, and I was coming up to the turn of the Dodge Stratus, and I like turned in and I gunned it. And since it's front wheel drive, all it did was understeer, torque steer, and I just went bam right into a curve immediately. And then I was probably about a mile, maybe 2 miles away from home, and I drove it, and I'm driving down this like little highway, and my steering wheel is like cocked one way, and it's just going clunk, 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 clunk. And I get all the way home, and then I have to explain to my friend's mom what happened, and then I'm looking at the car, and I don't know anything about cars. You know what I mean? Like, I mechanically, like, you know, some people are like blessed, like they're mechanically inclined. That's not me. I have to learn the hard way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this is the embarrassing part, because like the next mod that I did is like I took the car to Firestone. I was like, I need to get this car fixed. And I asked my friend's mom, I was like, yo, where do I take this car? And like, oh yeah, take it to Firestone and they'll get it fixed. I took it there. They end up calling me, because I think I called them and said, yo, I need an alignment, because that's what they told me I needed to get my steering wheel straight or whatever. Is my friend's mom. Oh yeah, you need to get alignment, get your steering wheel straight again. Well, they called me back and they're like, yo, your like
Shit's fucked up.
yeah, left front wheel is bent. I was like, okay. They're like, we're going to need some wheels. We're going to need a replacement wheel. I was like, okay, no problem. So I went to Advanced Auto Parts and I went to the hubcap section and
Oh my god.
I bought a set of hubcaps, right? Fucking badass looking hubcaps. They're black with a red racing stripe on them. And I was like, hell yeah, mint. $20. About to take this up there, get my
Easy fix, no problem.
yeah. I brought it up there. I go up to like this service writer guy, and I was like, "Oh yeah, they told me I needed to bring some wheel to replace my wheel." I gave him the hubcaps, and then he was like, "Yo, like, you need a wheel?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You need a rim." I was like, "Where the fuck do I get a rim from?" And he's like, "A junkyard or like buy it off someone." And I was like, "Okay." So I like called the junkyard, I sourced a rim, got it fixed, and that's the end of that funny story. Pretty embarrassing now that I'm a mechanic, and I started off by like, here's some hubcaps, fix my bent rim. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, that just shows you can come a long way.
yeah, I mean, honestly blessed with like learning about cars from my friend Austin. He was like mechanically inclined, and
Yeah.
whenever I started, he had a Honda Del Sol or whatever, and I was like, man, that thing's sweet. And he was one of those people that would work on everything and anything all the time. If it had a motor, he was tearing it apart, fixing it. Like, I don't even know how he learned this stuff. So I pretty much helped him work on his car all the time, and that's pretty much how I started learning little stuff here and there. And then, but once I had that car for like 6 months, and it had like bald front tires because I would do burnouts with it and try to drift it and stuff like that. And
Wait, this is the Del Sol?
no, he had
he had a Del Sol.
this was my Stratus. This was my Stratus, dude. I was fucking ripping this thing around. So the front tires end up getting bald on this thing because I'm just fucking shredding it everywhere I go, trying to drift it and just
the most important tires.
Yeah, the most important tires. And like, I don't even know about tire wear. I just took a pair of hubcaps to Firestone. Like, I don't know anything about cars whatsoever. And then, so one day I'm driving, and I hear a siren, and I was like, oh shit, there's a cop behind me. I looked behind me, there wasn't a cop behind me. I looked to my left, I looked to my right. I could not figure out where this cop was, but I heard the siren and it sounded close. And then finally I looked forward and there was a truck in front of me. We were literally going through a light. So like in my like subconscious, I was like, all right, we're about to just run through this light and then we'll find the cop eventually. Well, I guess the cop was at the intersection, but the cop was in my blind spot. So the guy, instead of just driving through the light like a normal person, he slams on his brakes to try to like let the cop go by. And like, since I'm looking left, right, behind, trying to find the cop, well, the thing is, like, I didn't even drill him that hard. Like, I seen it, I responded, I hit the brakes, but my tires were so bald in the front, they just locked up, and I just like skidded up and hit his little like fucking ball, his like hitch thing, and it destroys the whole front end of my like the Stratus, which was like a blessing in disguise.
I was about to say you needed that.
Yeah, because I had full coverage insurance and everything. Because I listened to my friend's mom. She's like, she made me get full coverage insurance and buy this reliable car and stuff like that. Well, after I totaled it, reliable car. And then after I totaled it, she was like, you know, you're on like. Pretty much, she was like, well, what are you going to do now? I got insurance money because I had full coverage, and then Progressive dropped me because I was like 17, 18, and just totaled a car, so they like dropped me. And she was like, and I think they gave me like $3,000 for it or something like that, something pretty cheap. And I was like, she's like, well, what are you going to buy? I was like, I'm picking the car this time, because at this point, like, I was like, I want something that I want. And then I went on Craigslist. Was it Craigslist back then? Yeah, it was Craigslist. And I went and I started looking at like little Hondas and Civics. And I didn't know how to drive stick shift because the first car was an automatic too. I didn't know how to drive a stick shift or anything like that. So I'm like going to all these dealerships and meeting up with people on Craigslist looking at all these Hondas and straight garbage, all of them. And then at this time, my friend Corey, his dad, he was pretty much like helping me. He'd come look at some of the cars with me. He'd be like, "Yeah, you can tell like this one's been repainted, and you can tell it's been in an accident and stuff like that." Thank God, because I would have bought some piece of shit car because I was like, two-tone paint, fuck yeah, I'm buying this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I ended up buying a four-door EG Civic from a dealership. Cash. It was a cash deal. It ended up being like one of the mechanics from the dealership's car. So it had like that
That's
black
good.
and black and silver tint windows, like the
Oh, yeah.
two-tone tinted windows. It had that. It had a body kit, but he took the bumpers off and left the side skirt. So I had stock bumpers, but with like fucking ghetto like fiberglass side skirts. But it came with a set of wheels. It came with a radio that barely worked and like an amp that wasn't hooked up right and speaker, and that pretty much is what launched it. It had like a fart can on it, and then so I had to get my friend's or my friend's dad to drive it for me back to the house because I didn't know how to drive stick, and he test drove it for me and everything. He's like, "Oh yeah, it feels fine," blah 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 blah. So I bring the car home, and that's kind of like where it snowballed, like me being into cars, because after that I've had like 6 or 7 different Hondas and started doing all the bolt-ons and
We definitely started way different.
I think you started with like trucks and stuff like that.
I was all trucks,
So,
four-wheelers.
but I had this thing like Need for Speed. I played the Need for Speed game, and then you had the Fast and the Furious movies and stuff like that. So for me, like I wanted the fucking black Civic with the green neon lights that like robbed the semi truck. And that's what I ended up with. I ended up with a silver one and a four-door one with no neons, but I had a Civic, you know what I mean? And I remember I showed up to school with that and like stalling everywhere, trying to like learn how to drive it and stuff like that. And then I remember I only had it for like a week. I didn't even know how to like drive yet. And there's this Hispanic kid at my school. He had this yellow EG that had like an intercooler on it and a bunch of stuff, like looks sweet. I didn't know shit about cars. He's like, "Yo, you want to race?" And then I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." And then
Oh,
like
God.
so like after school, I follow him to this road to go race each other. And this is how bad it is. Like I just learned how to drive stick, and I didn't know like what RPMs were. I always just kind of like got the car rolling and then shifted gears. And then shifted gears. So when I raced this kid, I literally like he fucking launched like took off like crazy. He even like made everybody get out the car and do a burnout to like warm up his tires. I had my friend Jacob in the car. I was
Oh,
like,
God.
just rolled up the windows and turned up the music, you know. And he dusts me, he gaps me because literally I'm granny shifting at like 3,000 RPMs. Like I don't even know how to drive fast. I just learned how to drive the car. And I remember like after we had did that race, we did it twice, and he said something that stuck with me and I'll never forget. He was like, "If I drove your car, I would beat you if you drove my car." And I
Yeah.
was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You don't know how to drive your car." I was like, "Okay." So after that day, like I went home, and then that was kind of like because I didn't know.
You needed that loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
So
loss was really
by him
important.
saying that, I was like, man, he's right. I don't know. So then I went home and
Well, yeah. So on that point though, like you could have done two different things. You could have thrown in a towel and be like, "Fuck it,
yeah.
I'm done with cars. Fuck
Yeah.
this shit." But you know, I like how you were like, "Nah, hell no, I'm gonna show this motherfucker I can
Yeah.
drive."
Pretty much that's what I did. Like I went home, got on my computer, and I Googled how to drag race. And then I'm like reading that, which
The
didn't
power
help.
of Google.
It did not help whatsoever. Like I'm trying to figure out how to drive faster. And then I just don't know what happened because like I never found the information on like how to drive faster. It just kind of like as I started driving the car, I realized, oh, you can rev it up way higher and then shift. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what's this red line thing? It's like, oh, if I rev it up and dump the clutch, I can do a sweet little like front wheel drive burnout. You know what I mean? And everyone looks over at you, and and that's what I don't know. That's probably where it stems from. Is like I kind of like attention,
Oh
but
yeah, I love
but
it.
not but not too much attention. So
Yeah.
like with the Civic, it had the fart can so people would stare. It was riced out so people would stare. And then while people were staring, I couldn't help myself but dump the clutch and do like a small little burnout and take off like a stupid idiot. So like it was fun. And then once I met my friend Austin and he had the Del Sol, I was like, I gotta get a Del Sol. So then I ended up buying a Del Sol. I had two cars. The Del Sol had a motor swap in it. Like I didn't even know what motor swaps were. The Del Sol that I bought was motor swapped and it was fast as shit. And then me and my friend Austin's like, damn, why is this car so fast? And then I went down that whole rabbit hole of like motor swaps and Hondas and like different engines that you could put in your Honda. And it was just, let's just say I was broke every single week. Like I lived with my grandma, I had no bills, and I still had no money because like every time I got a paycheck, I would go buy some part that I didn't know what it did. Like I knew what it did because I would read about it on Honda Tech. And then I would have my friend Austin help me put it on. And then like I blew up that motor. And then I got like another motor. And then he helped me put it in. And then it was just like car after car. And then I was like, oh, I want this car instead. Or I want this car. Like, because I would read on the forums like, oh, this car is 200 pounds lighter. Let me trade this car and get this car that's slightly lighter. And then let me buy this motor and then put these parts on it. And like, because I was that internet kid that would read all this stuff and be like, I need this part. I need this car. I need to do this. 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 And then at the same time, I still didn't know how to drive. You know what I mean? I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand traction and stuff like that. I was just like, oh, I got all these cool parts. Look at my cool car and makes noise and stuff like that. So that's pretty much how I got into cars. And then
When did you get your first rear-wheel drive car?
the first real it was actually my IS 300. So I was into cars and I went through the whole Honda thing. And then I was like, I seen drifting and I was like, man, that looks badass. And then I also I was like a horsepower geek. Like I would read like what motors are the best, and then that's when I found out about the 2J, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, 2J, it's fucking the best motor ever." And then I was sitting here plotting like, "Ooh, what do I want to build? What do I want to build?" And at the time I had an RX-7, not an RX-7, RSX, Acura RSX, and
That's a big difference.
yeah, way big difference. But I ended up buying the IS 300, kind of like what Conrad's doing right now. In my head, I was like, all right, I'm going to manual swap this thing. I'm going to turbocharge. It's a baby 2J, literally just needs to add a turbo to it, and it's going to be a fucking shredder. It's rear-wheel drive. It's sexy as fuck. Like, it checked all these boxes for me. So that was my first rear-wheel drive car, and I was in love with that thing. And then, yeah, so that's when I started, like, drifting. Was I had this IS 300, and the cool thing with the IS 300, even if it's automatic, you can turn off traction control and it has Tiptronic, even though it's like an early 2000. So you could bump that thing down to first
Toyota
gear.
was on their shit, bro.
Yeah,
They're always
first
on
gear,
their shit.
second gear, like you literally could just put it in the gear you want and just automatic. The only bad thing with that thing is like it was front heavy, because freaking inline six or whatever, the weight balance was real shitty. So like I would try to drift this thing, and then it would just like swing around Mario Kart style.
You hit a damn banana.
Dude, so once I was working out at the Publix warehouse, and what I would do is like anytime they had a cafeteria there, so I had to drive to the cafeteria, and then when I would leave the cafeteria, I had to sit out this light. When it would turn green, I would have it in the Tiptronic mode, put it in first gear, just gun it, and then just like get sideways on this main road because I work nights and there's no one on the road, and then I would like fishtail it and then go into where I was supposed to be at. Well, I remember one time I threw it in, and I was like, boom, I was sideways, and I was like, hell yeah. And next thing I know, there's a car coming, and my car is still sideways. I'm like, this thing needs to straighten up. And
chill.
No, straight up. And I'm hesitating, like, come on, straighten up. And then finally, it catches traction because I hit like a little sand patch. It catches traction, and I just like, it slings me the opposite direction, and I just take out a sign. It was like, yeah. Straight up folded the sign over in half. I didn't get out or nothing because I was so embarrassed. I just fucking just drove over it. And my front bumper so the front bumper was ripped off because I just took out the sign. I just drug that bitch to work. Just pulled into work. I looked, the front bumper's under the car. It's broken in half. But also that was kind of like a blessing in disguise because it was OEM, and then after that I was like, I gotta fix this, and then that's when I got the TRD like bumper kit, like the badass like TRD kit, and then, like I wanted to get the little like centerpiece painted black. It looks so sexy on that car, and
it was white, right?
yeah, it had that.
Yeah.
That it was so expensive because I bought the body kit, right? And I took it to a body shop and had them put it on, which it came out okay, but they could have did a little bit better. But when they painted it, the paint that was on that car, because it's a luxury car, it was like stage 3, like pearl white paint. So the paint, like I paid, I think it was like 600 or 800 bucks for the body kit. It was like an eBay special body kit. It was fiberglass, and I had them paint it, but it cost me like $2,000 to get the kit mounted and painted and everything. And it was like super sick. It looked so good. Like I was in love with that thing. But I had financed it. So like after I put the kit on it, I was like, I'm not going to put any more money into this thing till I pay it off. And I remember I had the R154 transmission and the clutch and like the turbo kit. I had all the parts picked out for this car.
Oh yeah, I remember in the
Legit,
cart, right?
Yeah, sitting in my eBay like cart, just ready to check out. And I owed 800 bucks on it. And at this time, I started working at where I work now. I work for Subaru, and I'm a mechanic there. And I was daily driving it. I remember I was cruising one morning, and this lady pulled out.
How did you start? How did you start?
What do you mean?
Did you start a mechanic there? Like, what did you start doing there?
I started out.
When
I first started, I was like a lube tech, pretty much. So I guess I could tell that story. It's not real. I guess it is kind of car related. I moved to New Orleans for a little bit whenever I was about 20 years old to live with my brother. And I was working at Walmart. And if you ever seen the YouTube video, Wally 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 World, if you haven't, go check it out, because that's the Walmart that I worked at. So if you do go look at it, it's literally this rapper guy, and it's a song, and he's like, Wally 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 World. And that's like his rap song, and that's like his the part that he repeats all the time. And when he's saying Wally 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 World, it's literally these girls on a shopping cart twerking as he's like pushing them through Walmart and shit. He's like, I'm at Walmart.
Oh God.
And they're buying stuff. Anyways, I was the only white guy that worked there. And it was in the middle of the hood in New Orleans. And I was super broke because I was splitting the bills with my brother. And then at that time, I was doing some reflection. I was like, what do I want to do with my life and stuff like that. I was like 20 years old. I was using a credit card to be able to eat McChickens for lunch. Like I didn't even have money for food. And it was a dark place in my life. And I was like, fuck, what do I want to do with my life? And I gave myself 2 options. I was like, either become a professional video game player or do something with cars, because I was like, cars was the only other hobby that I was into other than like video games. And so I tried to do the competitive gaming thing for like 6 months, and then realized like, man, this shit's hard as fuck to like gain a following and make money and stuff like that. So I chopped it up, called my grandma up. I was like, yo, grandma, can I come back to Florida and live with you? And I want to go to school to be a mechanic. And she was like, okay. So I like moved back to Florida, and then I went to UTI in Orlando for 6 months before I dropped out, because like an idiot, instead of like finishing school, I got an apartment again with my brother and then raised my bills. And then I like needed more money. So I was like, I can't go to school and work full time. So I like quit school and started working in the warehouse. And yeah, so I went down this whole rabbit hole. But then it's like I ended up, becoming a mechanic based off of with my like 6 months of like school experience. I used that as like my negotiation tactic. And that I like, I showed up when I showed up to Canon, what did I have? I had the IS300. So I pulled up into the drive with my IS300 and my wheels and my fucking headlights and my riced out like Lexus. So it's like when you pull up in a car that's modified, they know like, okay, this guy works on cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like your car is almost like a resume to a degree. Like if you pull up.
Oh, it is. It's a reflection of yourself.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's some mechanics that drive busted ass cars because they just don't give a shit because they work on cars all the time. They don't care about their own car. But
There's 2 different types of mechanics.
Yeah, for me it was like I was a mechanic, but cars was a hobby. So when I pulled up, they were like, "Okay, this kid probably can work on cars." So they gave me a chance, and yeah, I've been there for 6 years now, working on. I started off with lube tech and then just slowly progressing. Now I'm a Subaru like master tech, and I just work on strictly Subarus all day, every day, and stuff like that. But yeah, the IS300 was the first rear-wheel drive car I had, and that's kind of like what gave me the bug. And then once I
It
like,
got you interested in drifting, yeah.
oh yeah, well I mean I was interested in drifting before I got the IS300 because like I seen a video and I was like, that's sick, like that I want to do
Yeah.
that, that's sick. And
It
then when I
all
started,
started with a fucking video.
oh yeah, straight up, because like all I did was car stuff, like I would see car stuff, so it's like, you know how like YouTube has an algorithm and it shows you stuff, shows you stuff, shows you stuff. So for me, it was always feeding me like Honda stuff, street racing, drag racing, Honda, you know, all this stuff. And then I just remember one time I don't know how I ended up on it, but it's kind of like what we were talking about the other day. It's like I ended up on one of those fucking Russian street drifting videos, and the dude
Yeah.
just getting it in a BMW. He just left, right, lock, and he's just shredding, and I was like, damn, that's sick. And then he's like, it's snowing outside, so he has no grip, but he's literally just like lock to lock going around like the freaking like statue in the middle, like in the little circle thing, and he's just shredding. I was like, that's sick. And I was like, I'm going to get me a drift car one day. And then whenever the IS300 was just going to be like a sick car, you know what I mean? I never thought like this is going to be a drift car. For me, it was going to be a sick car. It was going to be 2J turbo, big power, look sexy. Like that was my goal with that car. And then whenever I totaled it, because a lady pulled out in front of me and it got totaled, I got some cash back for it because I had full coverage insurance because it was financed. And I paid off all my credit cards and I had $1,000 left. And then I went and bought a Subaru Forester, like a first
Yeah, I
generation.
remember this. Yes, I do remember this. This is when you were dating Tiffany.
I can't remember if I think I did have the first. Was it the silver one or the green one? It might have been the
Listen,
green.
listen, I would always talk about cars, and she was
Oh
like,
yeah,
"Listen, you need to meet my boyfriend," and I'm like, "Okay, sure, like whatever the fuck."
yeah. Hmm.
And she showed me the picture of the IS that you were gonna drift, and then the
Yeah.
next time she showed me a picture, it was a Subaru, and I was like,
What
what
happened?
happened? Yeah, what happened to that?"
Yeah.
And then she was talking about how you wanted to get into like rally or something.
Yeah.
Or no, not that, not rally. Was it rally or was it what's it,
On
autocross?
it wasn't even that. She's just talking out of her ass because
Probably.
I I totaled the IS and I decided to be responsible and take
Yeah.
that chunk of change and pay off all my credit cards. And I was like, all right, no more credit cards. And I went and bought because I was working for Subaru. I was like, I need to buy a Subaru. You know what I mean? Because it's something I work on all day. I can fix it. They're cheap. They're reliable. And I liked them. So I went and bought the first gen Forester. It was this rusted piece of shit, but like I also loved it because it's like real boxy looking, and I love the boxy look. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like I put WRX suspension on it and lowered it and put like a roof rack on it, and I freaking took a bash like brush guard from a truck and welded it to the front of it so it looked like it was like an off-road like safari thing, and I put one of those like dildo shifters in it because it was 5 speed. I had like a little dildo shifter in it, and it
Yeah,
had
let's
like
go on
a
a safari. Let's check out the lions today,
yo,
guys.
straight up. And the parking spot at work that I'd park in was there was this one spot that no one parked in, but it was like in between these two trees, and it was kind of like slanted, almost like the car would like roll into the lake. But I would park in there, and you would be walking like at my work, and you'd see this random ass Forester parked in the between these bushes and these trees with like a little brush guard. And I took one of those like little American flags and shoved it in between like the headlight and the hood. And I called it the presidential turd was its nickname because I had the little American flag and it
Oh
was a turd.
God.
It was a rust bucket. But I had that, but I wanted to get into drifting because at that
Yeah.
point I was like, I got this beater. It runs and drives. It gets me where I want to go. I was like, I want to get into drifting. So I have this thing to where I like to modify cars to a certain point, and then the next step is you have to spend a big chunk of change to make
Yeah.
something a radical change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like going turbo or power adder or full suspension, whatever. So like I'll do all the like simple stuff like bolt-ons and coils and stuff like that, make it unique or whatever to like my taste, and then I'll get bored. You know what I mean? Because like I want to
Yeah.
modify, but I also don't want to spend fucking 5 grand trying to
Yeah, that
add a
shit ain't cheap.
turbo. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then it's also my daily driver. So I was like, all right, I want to get a drift car. And then I ended up trading this Forester for a BMW E36, which I should have kept, but I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I remember you having this.
Yeah, I should have kept it, but I was an idiot. I think it was a 4-door. Yeah, I think it was a 4-door. It might have been 2-door. Can't remember. But it was E36. It was inline six. Like it was the 328i. Like it would have been the perfect car to like start off with. When I got it, I was like, I'm gonna use this for drifting. But I was also daily driving it at the same time. So the first thing I did is I bought some like dirt cheap bucket seats off of Craigslist for like $40. They were like green because they had been sitting outside for so long. I bought those. I fully gutted this car because the interior was already shit. You know what I mean? The only reason I got the car because like, oh, this is gonna be sweet, and like, cause like I try not to look at the car as in like, oh, this is a shitty starting point. I try to look at the vision, like this is what it's gonna become.
Same. I always
So,
look at the vision.
yeah. So like I'm driving around this piece of shit BMW and it's not reliable like the Subaru. Like it's breaking down and fucking popping fuses and overheating and shit like that. And I remember like I fixed like because I'm stupid because I fix all these problems because it's like that's what I do. Like I service everything, I fix it up, I make it nice and reliable, and then I do like a few bolt-ons, and then it's like I get to that point to where it's like, all right, if you want to go to the next step, you need to invest a lot of money, and then I get rid of it like an idiot. And I had that BMW, and then I ended up buying another Ford. Well, I had the BMW and I was daily driving it, and it was fully gutted and it was rattling and the AC didn't work and it was just a piece of shit. So I was just like, all right, I need to get rid of this BMW and get something else. So that's when I ended up buying a Forester from work. It had like a wrist pin knock, so it wasn't like a rod knock, but like the piston on the rod, that little wrist pin had play. So like when you start it up, it'd go tick 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 tick. You know what I mean? So it would tick. It would tick. It almost sounded like a lifter tick.
Yeah.
It was coming from the bottom end. I drove it around like that for a long ass time, and then I ended up, because I didn't feel like messing with the BMW anymore, even though I should have kept that and that should have been my drift car.
Yeah.
I ended up trading it for a Miata.
I was about to say, I know that Miata's coming soon.
And that's when it went all downhill because I traded the BMW for the Miata.
Yeah, I feel like that is when you really got into drifting.
Yeah, because it's like I wanted to drift for the BMW, but I didn't really know how to get into it. I didn't know about any events or anything like that, and I pretty much lost inspiration because I wasn't like the E36 at that time for me. Like I wasn't like, oh, I really want this car, and I've always wanted a Miata because a lot of people, they see a Miata like, oh, that person's gay, he's driving a Miata, and like I said, I have a fetish for having the things that stand out and people see it. They're like, oh, it's a fucking Miata, and then like, you know what I mean? So it's like, when I bought the Miata, people were just straight making fun of me the entire time. Miata. I work with a bunch of old white guys and stuff like that, so they're like, "Oh, you're gay."
Roasted
like,
your
yeah, they're roasting me for this Miata, and I'm like, "Yeah, this Miata is about to be sick. Like, this thing's about to be sweet." And they all were like, "Oh, whatever," because it's like just another dumb kid, with this pipe dream or whatever. So like I have the Miata and the top leaks and I don't have a garage at the time. So the first thing I do is I take it to work, I rip the top off, I buy a brand new top online, I install a new like soft top on it, and it runs and drives good. The clutch was slipping though. Like after you would drive it for 30 minutes, the clutch would slip. And then I had a couple friends that I met through like car meets and stuff like that, and they started posting about drifting, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And then finally I like messaged and like, yo, how the fuck do I do this? Like, where's the events? Like, how do I get into this? I'm like, oh yeah, they have this event at Auburndale Speedway or whatever. And I was like, okay, when? They gave me a date, and it was a couple months away, and I was like, I'm going to that drift event. Like, I'm going to do that drift event. So I had this Miata, and I was daily driving. It was so fun to drive just because it's so slow. Like everywhere you go.
It's a little go-kart.
Dude, it's wide open throttle and you're still under the speed limit. Like it's fantastic. So you feel like, it reminded me of like the Honda days. Well, Hondas are pretty quick, but you're full throttle. And it feels like you're driving fast. And you're
what
just
up,
like,
officer? We're going good.
this is amazing. It feels so good. You see a cop, you look down, you're like, oh shit, I'm 5 under. I'm good to go. You know what I mean?
And your tag is whap, 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 whap.
Yeah, exactly. But the clutch started slipping and it was overheating, and then it sat in my garage, and I almost sold the Miata for like $600 to some kid in Orlando because I didn't want to work on it. I didn't feel like pulling the transmission out of it, and so like when it would come to big jobs like that, I was like I didn't have motivation to do it because I was like, why? You know what I mean? I'll just sell it because I had two cars at the time, and then that drift event, I was like, I'm going to that. And that was my motivation. And then when I had that motivation, I pulled that transmission out. I did the clutch in a garage at that apartment that me and Tiffany lived in at the time. Did it on my back. It sucked. I got it working, and then I started daily driving it instead of my Forester. And it was so fun to drive. And like, I blew up like heater core
You
hoses.
fell in love with that
Dude,
thing.
I fell in love with it. It was so fun to drive. And then also it's like there's a drift event coming up. So I'm getting ready for this drift event, and like my mentality was like I'm just going to go and drive and send it. Like I'm just going to go and drive. Like I didn't do anything to prepare for it. You know what I mean? I showed up with like I don't even think I brought extra tires. I think I just showed up in the Miata. I was like I'm going to try to drift this thing. And so I get there, and it was my first drift event, and I'm pretty nervous. I'm like, I don't want to go out there and embarrass myself. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So I watch for a little bit, and then that's when my friend Ben shows up in his Miata, and it's turboed, and it's smashed in different colors. And I'm just like, yo, that thing looks rad. Like, I'm going to go talk to this guy. And then I was like, yo, can I get a ride along? He's like, yeah, you can get a ride along. I'm sitting in his car. Like, I don't even know this guy. Like, I just met him. It's awkward because we're just sitting there, not really.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck to say to him. I barely know him. The car's loud as shit, so we're just chilling. And then he literally pulls out onto the track and is like first, second. He had a 6-speed too, so it was like good ratios. He was like first, second, third. We're going straight at the wall. He just fucking comes in with a fucking faint flick entry, and I'm in the passenger seat. So like the passenger,
Oh shit.
you're against the wall when someone's riding the wall. He throws it in. We're fucking close to the wall, and I'm literally like the wall's like next to me, and I'm like, holy shit! And he's just shredding, and he goes around the track and he's sending it. And I get done, I was like, dude, that was fucking sick. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, can I ask you for help and tips and stuff like that? Like I have a Miata and I want to start drifting it. Da da da. He's like, yeah. So then I would go out there and I would try to drive it, right, the Miata, and this thing's runs like shit, like no maintenance. Someone's everything's stock on it still. And I go out there and I throw it into a turn, and it even has like an open differential, like it didn't even have a welded diff or anything like that. I go in, I throw it, I do like a couple laps, and I spin out, spin out, spin out, spin out, come off the track. And my friend Ben at the time, he was super chilled, super cool, because he would watch me every single run. And I'd be like, so what do I do now?
He had patience.
He was like, drive faster. I think he had patience to a degree, but he also, I think he
Saw
realized,
potential.
yeah, because like whatever he told me to do, I would do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was like, go faster. Like I wouldn't even question him. I would go out there and I would go faster. And then so I'm in this stock Miata, has a shit ton of body roll. I have a shitty seat belt, and I'm just tossing myself around trying to drift this thing. Spin out, spin out, spin out. And then I go like, what do I do? He's like, go faster. And that's literally all he tells me every single time on the first event. Go faster, go faster, go faster, go faster. And then eventually I link one turn. Like I throw it in. I'm like second gear wide open.
That shit, bro. That dopamine was hitting, though.
I'm like 50 miles per hour. I throw it in. I like, when I throw it in, I'm also like bracing with my leg and my arm. Like my leg is against the trans tunnel. Yeah, I'm like pushing against the trans tunnel with my leg and my fucking arm, and like I'm like leaning over and trying to drive at the same time. So it's like is a shit show. But I got one turn, and I was like, oh, that was sick. You know what I mean? I got it, and then I went out there.
Fucking addicted.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I got it. And he was like, what do I do now? I was like, what do I do next? He was like, go faster, go faster. Like literally, that's all he told me was go faster, go faster, go faster. And then after that event, I was that annoying guy that added him on Facebook, messaged him, like, yo, what do I do next? Like, what should I change? Like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, you should like do this. I was like, okay, cool. And then that was like my motivation, because once I linked that one turn, I got bit by the bug and I just went deep. Like I was like, all right. So that Miata went from stock running on 3 cylinders. Took it to work literally like the next day. I do like a compression test on it, and I got shitty compression, so I buy another cylinder head from him, and I put a timing belt and water pump and a cylinder head and spark plugs and full everything to make it nice. Do a compression test. It fixed it. It still had a little bit low compression. I had like 150 across all four, and it's supposed to have like 180 to like 200. But in my head, in my theory, I was like, I even told my like coworker, the old guy I worked next to, I was like his apprentice. I was like, yo, I'm gonna turbocharge this car. I was like, the guy at the track, his is turbo, and that thing's sick. And he was like, that thing's gonna blow up if you turbo it. And I was like, nah. Like I read on the internet, this motor is designed for the 323. It's originally built to be turbo from factory. Like the internals are strong. Like it's gonna rip. I'm telling you.
I remember you telling me about this motor, bro. I swear, I remember you having this conversation with me.
I'm still in love with that build. Like it kind of Taylor and my friend Ben, they're going LS swap. Well, Taylor's already LS swap. Ben's going LS swap. But like, there's just that Miata motor. Like the weak point, the weak point in that car is the transmission to a degree. Like so, I started blowing up. Anyways, I ended up turboing this car, but I fucking love that car. So I remember I got motivated. And
I remember the fucking tractor.
It literally, I would hit up my friend Ben. What do I need next? He'd be like, get this. So I think I got, because I wanted to go driving at the next track at DeSoto. And he was like, to drive at DeSoto, I needed a roll bar. So then I bought me a roll bar because you hit your head on it. I bought this
I'll
roll
never
bar.
forget that.
I put it in the car, and he's like,
Fuck that roll bar.
he's like, you need a welded diff also. So like the next event, I went from running on 3 cylinders. The second event, the car ran good, and I put a 1.6 welded diff in it, which is what you're not supposed to do with a Miata. But I don't like to listen to people. I like to find out on my own sometimes. And I put the 1.6 welded diff in it, and it actually shredded for a few events till I blew it up. But at first, because I couldn't drive well, I had the 1.6 welded diff in it, and I put the roll bar in it. And then I started driving it. I went to DeSoto, and then I hit some turns, like, oh, this is fun. And I was like, what do I do next? And then I put a seat in it, and then harnesses in it, and then like a steering wheel, and then I put like bolt-ons on the motor, just like a K-end intake that I bought off some guy on Craigslist. Like everything that I bought besides the seat and the roll bar and the harness was like just used parts. And then my friend Ben parted out Miatas, so it was beautiful. So I'd be like, hey, I need this. He would just ship it to me because he ships parts all the time. So I didn't even have to like drive half the time to go get these parts. And
that made it nice.
Yeah, so like I'm making all these changes, and I'm going to every single drift event that comes up. I was driving like 2-3 times a month. So every single weekend, like I was going to DeSoto, I was going to Showtime, I was going to Orlando, and I was going to Auburndale. Every single event that popped up. And then in between those events, I would do like 1 change or 2 changes. Like I would get a new part. I'd be like, yo, Ben, what do I need to do? It's like, okay, you need to do this next. You need to do this next. You need to do this next. And then that's whenever you rode in it, and it was, I think the first time you rode in it, I still was on stock knuckles, I believe, maybe. I can't remember.
No, you had angle. You
Okay.
for sure had angle, because I looked at it and I was like, I've never seen this.
So by that time I'm pretty sure I had coilovers, the roll bar, the seat, the harness, the wheel, bolt-ons, pretty much the whole 9 yard for a stock Miata. And I was getting confident. Like I was getting super confident. And my friend Ben, like, he would be like, oh, go faster, go faster, go faster. That's always his fucking tip. He was like, just go faster. But it paid off because I learned how to momentum drive, and I learned how to drive with speed versus like, using power. So I thank him for that, but he would be like, oh, you need to go faster. And that's whenever I was at DeSoto, and the bank was really, really aggressive. And the Miata, even with cut knuckles, still has a shitty angle. So it was stock. So like I couldn't use power to like go through the turn. You know what I mean? Like I had to.
I remember you clutch kick.
Yeah, I either had to clutch kick the fuck out of it, or I had to come in third gear pinned wide open and just throw it and just pray. And then that's what I did. And that's whenever I hit it a couple of times, by myself. And then you were in the car, and I just kept.
Listen. The fucking only thing I said is don't go on the bank. That's the only thing I don't want to do. And the first fucking thing you did, you run the bank, and I'm like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Next fucking turn, bro. Bam!
Yeah. But like I throw it in, we're at third gear pin. I think it's 70 miles per hour. The
Yeah, we were
YouTube
getting it.
the YouTube comments do not believe me at
Oh, yeah,
all.
of course. They never will.
They're like, that's not 70 miles per hour. Look, it was third gear. Second gear topped out at around 50 to 60 because I had the 1.8 differential with a 5-speed. So second gear was kind of long, you know what I mean? So I had to get up to like mid 50s in second gear, just like my FRS right now. And we were third gear, wide open throttle, just pushing it as hard as possible. So we were between that 60 to 70 mile per hour range when I initiated, you know what I mean? And I literally initiated, over rotated, and just backed it straight into the wall, the bank. And then you had a stock seat, I had a Sparco, so I was fine. You literally
Fucking
whiplash,
boom.
hit your helmet on the roll bar, and that was the first time I crashed. But like, I just remember I hooked the truck up to it. I pulled the
I remember that shit.
pulled the quarter panel off the wheel, and then just went back out there and started driving. You know what I mean? And then that's when I was like, what do I do next? And he was like, you should go turbo. And then that's when I started like buying parts. Like,
Yeah, I never saw it after it was turboed.
yeah, you missed out because that thing was sick.
Yeah.
So
I remember seeing the video. You sent me the video of the tractor. Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding, 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 ding. I could just hear it. Ding, 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 ding.
yeah, so it's like because like I read a lot. So I knew like in spots based on what I read and research, it's like I knew there were certain spots I could cheap out on and certain spots I should spend money. And then I had Ben, who also was turbo, so he had experience. So I would listen to him. He's like, you need to get a mega squirt. And he's like, the manifold needs to be a cast iron manifold because the other ones just break. And then I went with the smallest eBay T3 turbo I could find at the time and just left it at, I think it was like 5 psi from the little wastegate pressure. And then it was an eBay intercooler and eBay intercooler piping with Mishimoto silicone hoses and clamps. And yeah, I got all that shit from Ben because he ended up blowing up his turbo car. And then he decided
we were there. We were there when he blew it up.
yeah, when
Yeah,
he
we
blew
were
it
there
up.
for that.
So I bought the intercooler off of him and the Mega Squirt, and he had a coil on plug wiring harness set up. I bought all that shit from him, and then he ended up finding the manifold from me. I got the eBay turbo, and I got the RX-7 injectors. I put it all on. Took me a while to get the car to start because it would just like try to start and just fall on its face. And then I remember like I was messing with the Mega Squirt and then the little like bleeder screw on like the throttle to get it to run. And then I tuned it to 1500 RPMs pretty much. And then anything past that, it would just fall on its face because it wasn't tuned at all. I got it to where I could pull it up onto the trailer. I pulled that bitch up onto the trailer and I had to go to Subaru school. And the tuner that I went to, Jeff Linfert, is located over there in Melbourne. So I dropped the Miata off to him. I was like, yo, set this up. It's a drift car, so like make it reliable, make it where it's not going to go lean. I was like, my drive style, I like to bounce off the rev limiter. So make sure that it's, when it bounces off the rev limiter, like it's not going lean, the timing's good, like because I drive aggressively and I don't lift. Like I hold the pedal to the metal. He's like, okay, cool. And that's what he did. And I remember I picked it up, it made 181 to the wheel. So that's like 200 something horsepower, and the factory rating for that motor is 100. So I literally doubled the horsepower of the motor. And then when I told you originally, when the compression ratio was a little bit lower, it was perfect because the rings were a little bit worn out. And the good thing about having a little bit worn rings is like when you put boost into a motor, it pretty much makes the rings come together and then they touch and then they break. But since they were already worn out, I pretty much just had like blow by. So I put a catch can in it and it was perfect. And the old guy that I worked next to that I told him like I'm a turbo this car, he did not believe me. And then he thought it was going to blow up immediately. And then I drove it for a whole year turbo, like every single event that I would go to. And he's like, I can't believe that car's running. I'm like, I told you motherfucker. Like I did the research. Like I know, you know what I mean?
That feeling is everything.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing was like I try to look at things in a theory mindset, you know what I mean? Like get all the data. It's kind of like how we were talking about oil coolers the other day. It's like you're just shooting in the dark because you don't actually have the data. You know what I mean? You're like, yes, the oil cooler is great. You know what I mean? It's going to help keep the temperature down. But you don't even know what the temperature is, so you're just kind of guessing. You know what I
I
mean?
don't need to know. I don't need to know.
Yeah, but that's pretty much my rabbit hole with drifting. And then, I did that for like 2 years, and that's whenever like, because I had the same goal as you. Was like, I want to go pro, but
Yeah.
I chose a Miata, and then you're like, oh, Miata's a shitty car. And it's like, I still think the Miata's a great car. I mean, look at Taylor Rick. He just got second place at the Clutch Kickers
Yeah,
10
that was
grand
pretty
event.
cool.
And before that, people were like, Miatas can't drift. Like,
Yeah.
he just won 5 grand in a fucking Miata. Yes, it's
Yeah.
LS swapped and all that shit, but still, you know what I mean? It's like Danny George back in the day with his Miata sending it. And I was like, I would tell everybody, I was like, this car is sick. Like, I don't care what anybody says. Like, drive it, get in it, and you'll know. You know what I mean? So, like, in
It was a
theory,
fun little car.
well, that was the thing. Like, in theory, like me, Ben, and Taylor were like, yo, in theory, this car should shred. You know what I mean? We just have to do it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing is like, people don't want to put that time, energy, and effort into doing it. And then with Taylor's like YouTube channel taking off, he did it, and then he put an LS in it, and then he's like the drift pioneer, other than Danny George, because he had an LS in his Miata back in the day with FD, but he was really inconsistent and crashing all the time. But at least with Taylor, like he's a really good driver,
Yeah.
so he pretty much showed everybody like, yo, like this car, fucking, it's a good drift car. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. And then the whole thing, I sold the Miata to my friend Ben. I went through some financial stuff, and I just reset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we're done with the Miata, tell us a little bit about the car that you have now, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I had the Miata for, I think it was like 2 years roughly, maybe 2.5, and I was driving all the time. And then when I went turbo, obviously I went through tires a lot faster because I had more power, so I was burning them up like super quick. And so every time I would go to a drift event, because I would have to buy new tires because it's hard to find used 14s or 15s, because nowadays cars don't run 14s or 15s. Like the smallest wheel you see on a car nowadays is like a 16, and that's
Yeah.
even rare. You know what I mean? Most cars are 17s and higher.
Yeah.
So Tiffany and I ended up splitting up, and then I ended up moving out onto my own, and my cost of living pretty much doubled.
Yeah.
So I couldn't afford to go to drift events anymore. And then I was paying a storage fee for my Miata because it had a roll cage and no top, and like I didn't want it exposed to the elements. And
Yeah.
I was like at that point in my life, I was like, I needed to cut cost so I could, live and not fucking be depressed because I was so broke. And so I ended up selling the Miata to my friend Ben, almost as like, he did a favor for me. Like he didn't have to buy that car, you know what I mean? But he has this he parks out Miatas, and he has a tendency to buy every single drift Miata that exists
That's
in
cool.
Florida.
Yeah.
He literally he had his blue car, and then he bought this guy Kip's car, which was another turboed Miata. Then he bought my car, which was a turboed Miata drift car. And so now he's doing an LS Miata build, and then he still has my drift car, which is for sale, which I have contemplated about
Mm.
buying back multiple times. But like I said, like I was spending like $300 to $500 every single time I'd go drifting. And I was trying to go drifting as much as possible because it's so fun and it's addicting. And once you get a friend, like all you need is one friend that like is willing to
Yeah.
go out there and shred
Every
with you.
single time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got to that point, and Ben is like, he's an animal. Like, since he parts out Miatas, he has so many spare tires and wheels 24/7. He's like, yo, you going to this drift event? I'm like, it's hard for me to say no. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going. So I kept spending all my money. But at that point, I could no longer spend the money because I split up with Tiffany. And so like I came up with a new theory. I was like, all right, I sold the drift car to Ben, and I was like, I'm a Subaru tech. I was like, I kind of want to like show my skill as like a Subaru tech. So I decided to buy the FRS BRZ. So because
It is.
it has a Subaru
It is
motor.
the FRS though, right?
Yeah, mine's the Scion.
Technically, it's the
Yeah,
same fucking
I
shit.
bought this. I bought the Scion FRS because it's literally like 5 grand cheaper than the BRZ, and the only thing that's different on it is like bumpers and like some interior pieces, but it's
Yeah.
the same fucking car. Like
Yeah.
transmission, engine, suspension, it's all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So if you're buying a BRZ, you're literally just paying $5,000 for a Subaru emblem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is
Fuck
stupid.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fuck
stupid
that.
in my opinion. Granted, Subaru did have some better features, like you could get the premium with the push start and automatic AC and stuff like that. So there was some pros to buying the Subaru. But personally, I like the FRS because the bumper is more aggressive looking,
Yeah.
and that's why I was like, I want. That's what I. So my theory was like, all right, I'm gonna buy this car, and then I'm gonna work on building up my foundation. So I bought the FRS, and then I paid off my student loan, and then all my credit cards are paid off, and then I got roommates, and then it cut my cost of living down. And the good thing about having the FRS is since I work at a dealership is I get free tires that come off of
Yeah.
cars. They're burners, so they don't last very long, you know what I mean? But they're free. So my drift event cost went from 300 to 500 event to 100 to 150 event. So I
Yeah.
could do double the amount of events with this car. The only thing is that I had to start over from scratch with the FRS because it was a
Yeah.
bone stock car when I bought it. So the last couple years, that's pretty much what I've been doing is like paying off debt, lowering my cost of living, and then I started drifting the FRS. I don't know, when was that first event? I think it's probably been about 6 months now, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to
Yeah.
check my YouTube to know exactly. But I've been to 5 events with the FRS now, and I'm doing exactly what I did with the Miata. It's like I go to an event, I drive it, and then I'm like, okay, what do I want to change on it? And then I change that piece, and then I go drive it. It's like, what do I want to change on it? What do I want to change on it? What do I want to change on it? So like my first event, I drove the car completely bone stock because I wanted to see how it felt bone stock, and it actually shreds like super
Really?
well. Oh yeah. The only thing it was hard to get used to is like because when you come from a Miata that had manual, because I deleted the power steering to an electric power steering rack, it's a little funky compared
Yeah.
to the Miata. And then the Miata also had the BCs and a roll cage, so the chassis was stiff as shit. So like literally, it would just like it. That car, I had that car set up to where it drove itself. All you had to
Yeah.
do was get on the gas, get off the gas, get on the gas, get off the gas, and the car literally would just you literally would flick the wheel, catch it, flick the wheel, catch it, flick the wheel, catch it. It literally drove itself.
Yeah. That's how
And
the Z is.
yeah, so the FRS, I was like, the first event, it was stock. And then the next event, I think, what did I do the next event? I think I did like a White Line makes these little inserts. You know how like you went solid bushing?
Yeah.
Because the FRS is still
Yeah.
like,
White Line has the. I know which one you're talking about.
yeah. So they have
I've
these,
looked at those.
they're inserts and it's supposed to like increase the stiffness by like 50% or whatever, but you're not going to a poly or a solid bushing.
Yeah.
So, because first thing I did, I was like, let me buy more drift spares because you want more wheels and tires to bring to drift events. And then when I bought a set of spares, this guy had extra parts laying around, and I got a HPS silicone hose for the airbox, which does nothing, but it allowed me to delete the FRS BRZ has this thing called a sound generator. It's
Yeah.
pretty much like a little baffle that allows you to hear the engine noise when you accelerate, and it's pretty stupid.
In the cab, right?
In the cab.
Yeah.
So he gave me that silicone hose and the White Line inserts. He gave them to me whenever I bought the wheels. I was like, all
Oh
right,
yeah.
dope. So I put the stiffer White Line inserts in, and I put that HPS hose on, and then I had bought more spares, and then I went driving again. So it was practically stock again. And I think I changed the alignment a little bit. And then after that event, the third event, what did I do? I think I bought the White Line insert for the transmission mount, and then I think the car was even stock again on the third event. I think I put like a muffler delete on it or something like that. Nothing crazy. And then the fourth event is when I made like a big change. Like I bought a set of coilovers. So I put a set of coilovers on, and then I bought a set of Megan Racing inner tie rods with a little built-in spacer to give it a little bit more angle than stock. So and then the good thing about the FRS, whenever you put the coils over, I could increase the camber in the front now. So I changed the alignment, and then I put the little bit more angle on it. And then when I put that little bit more angle on it, the stock sway bar link was touching the coilover at full lock. So what I did was I drilled a new hole in the stock sway bar took forever. It took me like 2 hours because
Uh-huh.
it's made from like cast steel or some shit like that. So it took me forever. But I drilled new holes into it and I bought some white line adjustable sway bar links. And I put that on the car and then I did it in alignment and then I went and drove it like that and it drove 100 times better because
Yeah.
I think this is what it does when you increase camber, right, in the front. It also changes the caster. So when you increase camber, it gives you more positive caster also.
Yeah.
And positive caster helps with self steer.
Mm-hmm.
When it was completely stock, I was struggling with the FRS, as in like I would be sideways,
You're
and
fighting it too much.
it wouldn't transition. Like the steering wheel couldn't keep up with like the transition speed.
Yeah.
But whenever I put the front camber in it, I'm pretty sure it changes the caster and now I'm running close to like I think it's like 6.5 to 7 degrees of positive caster in the front. So now it self steers a lot better. But I was running into a lot of issues with binding, like my wheels were touching the inner like fender wells. So that was the fourth event. And the fifth event, I put full exhaust on it, catless header, catless front pipe, all the way back. So it's pretty much straight pipe.
Sounds like a
And
Subaru now.
sounds like a Subaru because I got unequal length headers. It fucking sounds
You love that stuff.
so good. And then I put toe straps on it. Damn, bro, you garbage. I put this toe straps on it, and then I changed my front wheels that I was using for drifting because I was using the OEM wheels up front, but it was touching on the inner ones, and I had another set of wheels that I bought because I buy way too many wheels because I like to have a bunch of spares. So
Oh, fuck. How many do you have right now? How many do you have?
I have 8 stock wheels, and then I have two
This
wheels.
is hold on. You in reality have what 12 because you got 4 on the car and 8 extra.
No. Let me finish. I have 8 stock wheels, right? Those are drift spares. I use those for 17-inch tires because that's what
Okay.
stock wheel size is.
Yeah.
From 205 to 225, you can run on the stock wheel because it's like a 7.5-inch wide wheel. And then I bought 17 by 8, which allows me to run up to a 235. Those are what I use for the front, and I put grippy tires on those, which I got off a trade-in from work. I got some Dunlop like fucking grippy tires, like autocross tires that I put for the front. And then I bought 2 more 17s because sometimes we have WRXs that come in with a 235 17. So the stock wheel can't fit that. So I bought 2 more 17-inch wheels. I bought 17 by 9s, which can run up to a 245, 255. So I have all the 17s cleared. And then I have another set of wheels that I use for daily driving because you got to look good when you're daily driving. Those are my
You talk about me and the spending that I'm doing, and you talk about looking good.
well, that's what drifting is. You have to have an aesthetic at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
It's a
I'm
balance.
all about performance.
It's a
My
balance.
thing is, I don't give a fuck what it looks like. I happen to buy a car that looked decent.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. But for daily driving, I bought a set of 18-inch wheels because it fills the wheel gap because you got to be hella flush. You know what I mean? But you don't want to be too flush because then it rides like shit. So I got my my daily driving wheels are 18 by 9.5s, and I run 245s on those for daily driving. And then I just bought the other day because after this last drift event, because we get some 18-inch tires from because some WRXs and STIs have 18s, like because you can if you get the upgraded wheel package, either 17 or 18.
Yeah.
So I've been saving 18-inch tires too because I knew eventually it's like, okay, I'm going to run out of 17-inch tires and I'm going to want tires. So it's like these are free, so I'm just going to keep saving them. I have a little garage at my apartment. So I have a bunch of 18 saved up. So after this last drift event, I was like, because my 17 stack is starting to get low because I've done 5 events now. And I was like, well, I got to start using these 18s. So I need to buy another set of wheels to run these 18s. So I ended up buying another set of 18 by 9.5s. And then also, like, if I ever decide to do like Pro-Am and stuff like that, the 9.5s will let me run up to like a 265, 275. So the limit is 255 now with the rule book, but the 9.5 So I bought the wheels and they look sexy, like the wheels that I bought. And they're the perfect spec because like I've been playing around with my daily driving wheels, and like I have a couple different spacers to try to get it just right to where the rim is like perfect. Because I daily drive on my drift stance. Like I have the front camber and everything dialed in. So when I'm daily driving, my front tires are -3 degrees of camber in the front. The wheels fucking flush as shit. Like the rim's flush with the fender and the tires tucking under there. Well, they call it battle stance, pretty much, is like the term that people use. It's like it's race ready, but you're daily driving it. So that's the way it's set up now. So the wheels that I bought are the same specs as my daily driving wheels because I know which wheels fit perfectly on that car for the stock body. You know what I mean? So it's going to be sick because now I'll have four more rims for 18s, which I'm going to use drift burners. So okay.
So what's your favorite mod on the FRS right now?
The exhaust.
Oh yeah.
It just sounds good. It sounds good. It sounds like a Subaru now. It's loud and obnoxious, and I have this weird thing to where like I like people to notice. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and when you're
course.
stock,
well, I have a straight pipe 350Z. I feel you.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have a straight pipe 350Z, but everybody has a straight pipe 350Z. So for you, they're just like, oh, it's just another straight pipe 350Z. No, but for me, they're like, is that a Subaru on track? And then it's like, because there's not that many, like, at least in the local scene that I'm in, there's not that many FRSs and BRZs because one, they're kind of expensive, but the prices come down a lot. And I honestly think the chassis that I have now is the next like 350Z chassis. It's like another alternative. It's newer. It has 200 something wheel horsepower. It can fit all the like tire sizes that you need. Huge aftermarket support. They're reliable, long as you fucking keep oil in your car. Like, you know, it's, in my opinion, because like there's a guy I found online, he fully gutted his FRS and did like all the lightweight wheels and like carbon fiber drive shaft. And I think he when he scaled it, it weighed 2,200 pounds. So that's pretty fucking light.
Yeah, there's a weight limit.
Yeah,
for Pro-Am, right?
I'm pretty sure.
It has to be I mean, there's a minimum, right? Yeah.
Because they don't want people like overbuilding their cars. I don't like the weight limit rule, to be honest, because I think it should be by chassis. You know what I mean? Because like a Miata, like from factory, it weighs fucking 2,200 pounds. So by the time you gut it and put a cage in it, like my Miata, Taylor just came out with a video. They scaled all the Miatas. They scaled my Turbo Miata, and they scaled the LS Miata, and then they scaled his LS FC RX-7.
Yeah.
My old Miata weighed in right under 2,000 pounds. Okay, I think in the rule book the chassis weight is 3,000 pounds minimum, maybe, which is a lot of weight. I would have to add 1,100 pounds to the Miata for it to be considered eligible to drift, which I think is stupid for Pro-Am level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think they should just stick with the tire size, and that's it. You know what I mean? That way people can't overbuild their car, because if you show up with 1,000 horsepower but you're limited to a 255, you're not going to be able to put 1,000 horsepower down. Yeah. So. But,
all right. So how about what's your least favorite mod? Do you have a least favorite mod?
My least favorite mod is my wheel spacer on the front.
Why?
Because I have this thing about buying the perfect offset spec rim. So a lot of people, what they do is they'll put a big ass spacer on their rim, right, to try to get it to clear and all that good stuff. But my theory is like, why not just buy the proper sized wheel? Because then it fits right.
So you gotta worry about that shit.
Yeah, so it's like you'll see like people at the track, they'll literally have like a fucking, because people are trying to make their wheels flush with their car. But the thing is, like, when you do that, you're changing the scrub radius of the car. So you're changing how the car handles. Yes, it looks a little bit better, but now it handles like shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the one thing. And it's like what I need for the front, like there's no wheels available for the offset and the wheel size that I want. But it's okay because who knows where I'm going to be in the future, because maybe I might add like even more angle. And if I add more angle, I'm going to need a different offset. So that's like the bad thing is like when you change angle or control arms and stuff like that, you have to try to figure out the perfect wheel that clears everything, but also fits and looks good, in my opinion. Some people don't give a shit. Some people just rock a spacer and they call it lobster. Was it lobster stance when the fucking wheel is sticking out past the fucking fender, like that shit's ugly as shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, I do.
like if your wheel's sticking out that far and you already got all your money invested in this angle kit, you have the money to buy some wider fenders to make it look good. You know what I mean? In my opinion. So
what's some of the plans for the FRS, like future mods?
well, the FRS is, I could give you my plans for automotive in general, because like the FRS is kind of like, it's in its sweet spot. It's exactly where I want it right now.
Yeah.
Other than the only other change I want to do is change the differential that's in it, because it has a torsion diff. And when you're at Orlando, there's a bank. So say you're on the apron and you go up on the bank a little bit, the differential will open up and try to shift power to one wheel that's on the flat surface versus one on the bank, and then it just straightens the car up. So I have a differential for it already. I just have to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I bought the coilovers, I bought it from a guy. He had I bought the coilovers and a two-way, what was it, Cusco or something? Costco? No, Caz, Kaaz, two-way differential. So I bought that from him. But to do the differential in the FRS, you have to, the way it's designed in the subframe is you have to remove the whole differential out of the subframe to be able to pull the housing off to do all of that. And I've never actually built a differential before. Like, I know how it's done in theory and stuff. That's one of the reasons why I've been holding off to the end, because it might take me a minute to figure it out exactly. And then when I put this differential in, I might have to buy different shims to get it set up properly. But the reason I went with the two-way versus like a lot of people go welded diff, it's a street drift car.
Yeah.
So
you still daily it.
Yeah, I daily it, but at the same time I have a truck and a motorcycle, so it's like if I ever do wreck it, like I drive it like it's not a daily though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. I was like, it's a street drift car, so it's like because I went with the Miata, I straight up went full race car mode, roll cage, fully gutted. I didn't even put the dash back in. Like, I did not give a shit. Like, no heater core, no air conditioning. So it's like it would rain. The roll cage I put a little bit too high, so I couldn't even buy a hard top. I would have to like cut the cage and lower it a little bit, and I didn't feel like going through that. So like my friend Ben made like a bikini top for it, and that works pretty well. But it's like it had no windows, no nothing. So you're out in the elements.
Bare bones, yeah.
And when you live in Florida, it's hot as fuck. And then you're getting baked all day by the sun, and then you're sitting in line in the drift line waiting for your turn. You're getting drained.
Getting roasted.
If it rains, which it rains a lot in Florida, I have no heat or defrost, so the window fogs up like a motherfucker, and then I can't see where I'm going. And so I went down that road, and I think a lot of people do this. They go full race car and then realize like, yo, I didn't need to go full race car. If you're not competing, you don't need to go full race car, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because you can keep all your comfort. Like, I do want to.
Yeah, you love comfort.
Yeah, it's like I do kind of want to do a cage, like a bare bone cage, but I want to have it set up to where it's like a street drift roll cage, to where it's like I'm not cutting out my doors, like I'm keeping my radio, my speakers, and like I want the AC to still work, I want the heat to work, I don't want any fucking, I don't want any check engine lights and lights coming on the dash, because it's funny, but like when I sit in the line and it's hot outside, I roll up my windows, I got dark ass tinted windows.
You turn on the AC.
I turned the AC all the way up. I turned my music up. I listen to a podcast. I watch a YouTube video sitting in line. I got Bluetooth radio. Like, I'm just chilling. It's my turn up. I roll the windows down. I turn the air conditioner off. I send it for 2 minutes. I get off the track, roll my windows back up, put the AC back on, get back in line. Because it's not.
We are so different.
Well, that's the thing, is like you want to go this pro route, which I don't blame you. it's really appealing, and it's fun. It's badass to build a race car. But like, if I decide to go that route, I at least want to buy another daily driving car before I go that route. So like for me, my plan, like if it was the perfect world, well that's also the other thing. It's nice having a street drift car because like you can go on the streets and it's street legal and you have your comfort and you can go hoon in the rain and like have a good time and kind of like get that itch scratched. You know what I mean? Without waiting.
My race car is
Yeah.
street legal. I made sure of it for that reason. I asked myself, I was like, do I really want to pay an extra $130 to keep it insured, keep a tag on it? And I was like, yeah, I do.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing. Whenever you get to that point to where you have a full cage and stuff like that, you're most likely not going to want to drive it on the street very often. You might drive it on the street just to like, if you change up some stuff, to go for like a test.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So like the ultimate strategy that I have in my head is I have the truck because the car is pretty much done. The only thing that I want to do is maybe a couple more bolt-ons on it and get like a legit tune done with it so it makes a little bit more power. Maybe like a flex fuel setup so I can like run E85 and get a little bit more power, because like it makes, from the factory, it makes like 200 something horsepower at the engine. So it's probably making roughly like 150, 160 wheel. Supposedly with full bolt-ons, like the exhaust is like the main restrictor on like the FRS, the headers or whatever. Supposedly with full bolt-ons and a tune, you're making around 200 wheel horsepower. If I could get that close, I even thought about playing with nitrous a little bit. If I could get that close to like 250 or 300, I can keep up with 95% of cars in Florida on the tracks. Because the only time someone really gets away from you is on the start line.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
But if you have a friend, you could communicate. Like if me and you were driving, 350Z is going to be faster than my car. I'm pretty sure.
1000%.
Yeah. So I would say, hey, whenever you're leading, don't take off like a madman. Like go a little bit slower so I can stay up on you. So when you initiate, I can get on your door.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't communicate and they'll just like take off and then there's a gap and like you're trying to tandem, you're trying to fucking be on each other's door and have a good time. And that was a good thing when you have like people you drive with a lot. You can say this stuff. You can watch a video like, bro, we need to get closer. I'm like, yeah, your fucking car makes 100 more horsepower than me. Slow the fuck down. And then once we're drifting, once you're sideways, people aren't pulling away from you. You know what I mean? Unless they have like super grippy tires and a super grippy setup. But like 90% of the time, like once you're sideways, like you're staying up on them. And then if you're following, you can change your angle up to get up on their door. You know what I mean? So I would like to like squeeze as much horsepower out of it without going to a serious power adder, if that makes sense. Because once I go turbo or supercharger or whatever, like it's going to get expensive. So I would like to do that. And then after that, I really want to fix up the tow rig and get it. I want to have it set up to where like, you know, we could be like, yo, there's a drift event in Georgia. Like, let's fucking roll out and go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want to be able to travel and go places and go to different events.
Same.
You know what I mean? So that's my ultimate goal with so like, I don't want to do much more with the FRS. So like the timeline would be FRS is pretty much done. Maybe a couple more bolt-ons and a tune. Build the truck up to be super, super reliable. I want to build my trailer up, get like a tire rack and a winch and a toolbox and all that shit on the trailer, set the trailer up for traveling. Once that's done, then I thought about getting I want to get an all-wheel drive car to be a daily / rally car. And then when I get that car, the FRS might become full race car. We will see. It just really depends what's going on, like what I want to do with my goals. But my main goal is just to like do rad shit and make content, because if you focus on going pro too much, all your money goes to that and you don't go drive. You know what I mean? You're spending all this money to build the car versus going and having fun. I'm trying, like the 2 years that I did the Miata was super, super fun. Then it got super, super expensive because I added power to it and it was just burning tires. And I was like, I don't want to go back down that rabbit hole. I kind of want to keep the car manageable, and then just like, yo, let's go to Grid Life. Like, yo, let's go to this like super rad event over here. Let's go to fucking, all the cool events. Let's go to travel to California and go drive these iconic tracks and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, no, that's cool. So to wrap it up here, do you have anything else to tell them about, basically your story?
I think that pretty much covers all of it automotive wise. Obviously life is complicated, so you could I can talk about a bunch of different stuff with life, but
Well,
this,
for the
yeah,
automotive
for
part, for
this,
the automotive part.
honestly, it's like the thing I want to do, like for you, like your main focus is like going pro-am and stuff like that. Drifting specifically. For me, I want to do a little bit of everything. Like I want to do rally, I want to do rally cross, I want to do some circle track and learn all those like motorsports, because it's like, and then study those like setups for those motorsports, because you can learn something in circle track or dirt track, come back to drifting and be like, oh, I want my car to handle this way. I remember in circle track I set my car up like this and got more grip out of it. And you can apply different techniques and different skills that you learn from these other, areas of motorsport and bring it to
Yeah.
this motorsport, versus like whenever you're like super laser focused on one, you might be missing out on some key drive in or techniques or some, just different stuff. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
So
cool. So that about wraps up today's podcast. That is Eric's story. Next podcast, we'll be going into my story.
before we end the podcast, obviously,
Okay.
like, if you liked my story and you want to follow me,
Yes.
all my handles are Eric B Livin, the letter B, on YouTube and Instagram. And then if you're into video games, it's Eric B Great for Twitch and Xbox. So
Check them out. We'll see you
Yeah.
next time.